And when you and I first met, and I told you that we were doing this project about prediction, and we were talking about your happiness research, you basically said that humans are just prediction machines who are walking around trying to predict the future and how to be happy.
Well, it was funny. You said, why should people care about the future? And a little voice in my head said, what else is there to care about?
What else is in your future?
Well, what else is in the world?
Right.
The present, William James made this point. Yeah. The present is an infinitesimally small point on a timeline. Mm-hmm. The past, it's interesting, but there's nothing to be done about it.
Yeah.
So that only leaves the future to care about in some deep sense. I think they're asking you the wrong question.
And I have to ask you like a professional psychology question before we go on. We have made this statement occasionally where we qualify it, where we say humans are the only species that spend all this time thinking about their future. We think. So that we think. Do you know, are there other species that actually sit around thinking about the future a lot?
Well, I made the same mistake you just made, which is in order to be cheeky, I opened a popular book with the claim that human beings are the only species that thinks about the future.
Right.
And of course, that meant for the next decade, I would hear from people who disagreed.
Right.
Some of those people were cranks, but several of them were really smart scientists who illuminated my landscape by showing me data demonstrating that there are other species that do things that look remarkably like predicting the future.
Okay.
Now, it doesn't mean that in the head of an animal they are doing what you're doing when you go, I wonder what it will be like to eat cheesecake on a surfboard. And
Kayak in the fjord in Norway is the one that
okay,
I was
that's
thinking
even
about
better.
This morning. It's really happening.
But you can close your eyes and actually create a mental simulation of that. And from the experience of simulating, you can come back to the moment and go, oh, that would be fun. Or actually, it would be kind of cold and wet.
Right.
I'm still convinced no other species does that.
Okay.
Now, has nature evolved brains that are capable of making animals behave in ways that are anticipations of the future? Yes, and probably the most stunning data are not on, you might have thought it was dolphins or chimpanzees.
Some kind of primates, yeah.
It's not. It's corvids. It's ravens and crows. And they do things that look remarkably like plotting about the future. For example, there's great work coming out of Cambridge University showing that corvids often will cache food. They hide it for later. And the experimenters can change the parameters of when later will happen and what will be happening. And the corvids act as though their caching behavior is such that they're acting as though they understand that later the food will be moved, or later the food will be unavailable, or later the food will only be available at a certain time. It changes their behavior in the present. Now,
is that because they've seen it change in the past?
Yes, they've been taught.
Okay.
So there's no, they're not just so smart they figured out what the experimenter is going to do.
Good point.
Isn't it rather amazing that having been taught what will happen later, they now can base their current behavior on it? So some people believe this is evidence that these birds are actually, in some sense, thinking about, mentally representing a time that has not yet come. Yeah. So I think the answer is probably maybe some other animals can think about the future, but no other animal thinks about it like we do or as far into the future as we do. No other animal is thinking about its retirement 30 years later.
Reading about the John Snow Cub.
Learn more at predictionx.org, where you can stay up to date on all of our latest offerings and interviews.